Hello, my name is Sekou Tyehimba, and my brand name is Young Kings Clothing, also YK1K for short. Me and my brother started it back in 2013. Growing up as a kid, man, my dad always influenced me to start our own business just because I never saw him work for another man. My dad first took us on our first trip to Africa. I was in the 7th grade. It was around spring break time, and I'll never forget it because I didn't want to go. I was young, into sports, not really thinking about my future or stuff like that. I just wanted to have fun with my friends in my neighborhood. And I remember he made me, my sister, and my brother, he made us go. We didn't have a choice. I didn't know what to expect. My dad used to go to Africa all the time, and I was young. I didn't really process what he was doing. I mean, I knew we grew up in this family business, and I knew he was going for business. I just didn't know what I would go for. But I just have to say, that was the best trip of my life just because it opened my mind up to so many different things as a young child. I just remember us going the long trip. We flew first class, and I just remember that. Just they had all these entrees and meals, and as a kid, that's the good life, And I remember landing in Africa, and the first thing I saw was just a bunch of my people, and they told me welcome home. And right then and there, all of the phobia I had of just going to Africa, it just was wiped away when I saw my own people tell me welcome home. And just seeing my dad just so happy. When he was in Africa, that was the happiest I ever saw him. He was smiling, cracking jokes. He was just looser and just stress-free, felt like. And man, just that first trip, I remember it like it was yesterday, man. We stayed with one of my dad's friends who was like the president's son or the president's nephew or something. So he lived in like a pretty good neighborhood, not too far from where the president stayed. And I just remember I was expecting Africa to be huts and lions and tigers and bears, but when we got to where we were staying, it was in it was a big house in a gated community. Like, I'd never been in a house that big until I went to Africa. And just from that, I knew none of my friends had ever been in houses this big. So I just couldn't wait to get back to America and just tell my friends, like, man, I have a mansion in Africa. When I go to Africa, I stay in a mansion, man. And I remember going back and telling my friends, and they didn't believe me. And I had to show them pictures and stuff like that. So just my first trip to Africa, man, it just kind of changed me for the better. It just woke me up to Africa and the beautiful side of it, and not the side that they try to show us in school growing up. And I just couldn't wait to share that with all my peers. So growing up, my dad was always a staple in the community. Growing up in this family business, and I saw so many people come in, and everybody respected my father. He would have debates and discussions with men from all over, and it don't matter if they agreed or disagreed, they always respected. They left with respect for my father. And I used to see him have these discussions with politicians to drug dealers, just all types of people. And he would treat everybody the same. And he wasn't the richest guy, but they would treat him with a lot of respect. And I just always remembered that. When I was a small child, I remember my dad just always being an organizer. He was always in the streets passing out propaganda. I remember as just a child, he would make us come along with him, and he would call it blitzing. Let's go blitz this event. Where we would get, I remember going to the print shop and printing up 1,000 flyers, and we all would get like 200 apiece, 300 apiece, and we would have a competition on who could pass them out the fastest. And I just remember just me and my brother and my sister just going out there and just passing out these flyers. And you know, my dad, he was proud of us because we was doing something to help out, and we didn't look at it like it was work. It was fun to us going, because all the other little kids wasn't doing this, so I would even give some flyers out to the other little kids, like, hey, pass these out, and we would have fun with that, and I just cherished that so much. Man, I just remember my father always, just as I was so young then, but the first shop I grew up in, it was on Jefferson. And I just remember all types of parades and just big rallies that he used to put on. And just people, it was just always a lot of people who, and when he spoke, those people listened. And I would always just take note of that, and I had a sense of pride, and that's my father. And my brother Bambata started Young Kings Clothing around 2013 with a group of his friends that he was in school with. He went to school at Tennessee State University in Nashville, and at that time I was a junior in high school. I was still playing basketball. I wasn't really focused on my future that much if it wasn't concerning basketball. So I remember my brother calling me, and I was on my way to school, and he told me, yo, bro, I'm about to start up this brand called Young Kings. Because at the time, Meek Mill had put out a song called Young Kings, and I guess it had just resonated with my brother, the name Young Kings, and he just took that and ran with it. So me and my brother always liked clothing, and we liked having fresh clothes, and we liked being fresh. So me and my brother, I remember my dad never bought us any designer clothes, but my mom, she would be the one to buy that type of stuff. When my dad say no, we would run to my mom. And I just remember that so well, just because I have to thank my mom for buying me some of those clothing, just because it shaped me and my brother's sense of style at a young age, to where our peers looked at us a certain way. They looked at us as trendsetters. So once being a trendsetter, you always try to stay ahead of the curve, and you want to make sure that you're the first one to do it, or you do it the best. So that's just always been in me and my brothers. Like, we always had a competition amongst each other. I want to be fresher than him. He wants to be fresher than me. And it got to the point to where we couldn't even compete because we was wearing each other's clothes. So we were the family, the trendsetter family. That's how people looked at us. And I just remember, so when my brother called me on my way to school, he said, yo, bro, I'm trying to start up this clothing line, and I want you to be a part of it. And I said, no, man, I don't want nothing to do with a clothing line. I just told him, but if I was you, I would incorporate the African fabrics into your clothing line, bro. Because at that time, I had just wore an African shirt to school that my mom had brought from Africa, and it was a button-down shirt, and I wore it with some Jordans, with some nice pair of jeans, and people's response was out the roof. They loved it. They wanted to know where I got it from. And in my head, it clicked, like, man, I could really make some money off of this stuff that I've been around my whole life that I used to be embarrassed to wear. I started to see that these fabrics can be made into urban items that the youth can grab onto and really cherish. Trip to Africa. All right. So after that, I told him no. He went on and started the brand with him and some of his closest friends at the college. And they just was doing t-shirts with the brand on it, Young Kings. And just they started off as kind of a t-shirt brand. So a few years later, I finally came on board. I was in college myself at Tuskegee University. And I finally came on board, man. I was broke and I needed some money of my own. And my brother had sent me a sweatshirt that they had had in my brother sent me a sweatshirt that they had in stock, and I wore it with some of and when I wore it, the campus loved it. And right then and there, I said, man, I'm about to help my brother out, and I'm about to help myself out and start selling this brand and selling these clothes, helping my brother. Right then and there, I knew that I could make money from this and that I could use this as a tool to learn business and start up my own business. And so after I wore that sweatshirt and all of my classmates liked it, I knew right then and there that I could take off and help my brother with the business. After that, I was all in. So I sold every pair of shoes that I had. I put them all on eBay, and I had some pretty expensive shoes. And I want to say I made about $3,000 or $4,000 off of my shoes. And I took all of that money, and me and my brother went straight to Ghana, West Africa. And as soon as we got to Africa, we went straight to the fabric market, and we were just overwhelmed with all of the different patterns. And when I was looking at these patterns, I was saying, oh, this go with those shoes, this go with that shoes, oh, I could wear this with that. And we just was overwhelmed with ideas and just creativity. And the rest is history. So we got some button downs made out of the traditional African fabric, and I brought it back to my campus. He took some back to his campus, and the youth loved it. Our peers loved it. They just couldn't believe that we actually went to Africa and got this. So they felt a sense of quality, but just a sense of, they felt like we put a lot of time and energy into our product, because we separated ourselves from all the other t-shirt brands, and we became an actual clothing line. And it was a good feeling, because I knew plenty of people with clothing brands and t-shirt companies, and once we went to Africa, it kind of separated ourselves. And I remember when me and my brother returned to Africa, we stayed in the same place we stayed in when we grew up. I mean, our first time coming to Africa, we stayed in the same place. So thinking back to the effect that the first trip when my dad took us to Africa, that it had on me and my brother, it was huge, because when we went back to Africa, they embraced us with a sense of, it was just real love, because my pops had spread so much love in those markets. It was the same markets that we returned to. And when my pops died and when he left, they maybe thought that was the end of that prosperity that he brought with him. But when we returned, we saw it in their eyes, like, he's back, but he's coming through you guys. And that was it made us feel good. And without him taking us to Africa and showing us this market, showing us where to go, we would have been lost. And from going to Africa, it just opened our eyes to the international market. Once we started going to Africa for the second and third time, going and getting new merchandise for our brand, by that third and fourth and fifth time, people were like, oh, so these guys are serious. These guys aren't playing. And people started taking us serious, and we started receiving all types of new resources and new opportunities. And one of the opportunities that we saw is just the relationship that the Chinese and the Africans have, and how much business they're doing together. And us being in clothing and manufacturing, our African sources told us that we should go to China to upscale our business. And so once we got the word that we needed to go to China, we went to China. And once we went to China, that just opened our mind up to to everything. We saw the major scale of production that was going on with these multi-million-dollar clothing lines. We saw the quality of goods and the quality of, we saw the difference in high quality goods, and we saw the difference in low quality goods. And at the time, the products that we were getting made, they were on the low product end, and they were on the low quality end, and we didn't have the resources until we went to China to up our quality level. And once we went to China, they just taught us to pay attention to detail. And it was just the little things that separate you from other brands, and the little things that you put time into, and if you pay attention to the little things in the detail, it'll take your brand a long way. And they had the machinery that Africa didn't. So it was just a no-brainer for us that we needed to work more in China, do more work in China. And we would never have known where to go in China, because China is a big place. We would have been lost in China if it wasn't for our roots and our connection in Africa, and they pointed us in the right direction. So my father is definitely to thank for that. And my father used to tell my mother all the time that he wanted to go to China, but he never got a chance to. So I took pride in making that move for him and going to China. And when I went to China, it just, me and my brother, it expanded our mind just completely. And so from going to China, going to Africa, it really separated me and my brother from the rest of our peers in business. Instead of looking at things on a small level, we looked at everything on a very large scale, because we saw the millions and millions of dollars that these factories and these logistic companies in China are dealing with on a daily basis. So we just wanted to get our hands in on that type of business. So instantly from going to China, we saw the level of production and how we wanted our brand to be perceived, in the level that other big brands were perceived. We saw their infrastructure on how they got to that level. And we knew what we wanted for our brand. We wanted our brand to be the biggest brand in the world. And we looked at all the other big brands, and we saw their production facilities and how they get down and how they process. All right. So once we got to China and we saw how everything worked, we knew that we needed to expand our brand all over the US, all over the world as much as we could. And at that point, we had been to Miami, we had connections in New York, Atlanta, pretty much all over but the West Coast. So we decided that one of us needed to locate to the West Coast, and it was myself. So when I got to the West Coast, I saw it was like night and day from Dallas as far as building a brand. And I saw it was so much competition, so many people from all over trying to accomplish the same thing I was trying to accomplish. So quickly my mindset kind of switched from building a brand to building other people's brand. Just because I was looking at everybody who's building brands, and they would all get their products made in the same place in downtown Los Angeles. And at that point, we were getting our products made in China, so our quality was a lot higher and our products was different from everybody else's product. And when I was talking to these other brand owners, they were just so amazed at how our product was way better than their product, and they wanted to know how. And I just saw that trend that all these guys, they might have more followers than us, more connections, more money than us, but they all wanted to know how our product was better than theirs. So I instantly saw my worth and where I could be helpful. And right then, I saw where our knowledge could be profitable and where we could take advantage of all our trips to China and Africa, and help these other brands build their brand and build their quality of their products, and where we could get paid from that. So from that, from being in LA and seeing where we could be useful, we instantly saw that we could start up a merchandise manufacturing company. And that's what we did. We added that sector to our clothing brand. So people would see our brand and we would instantly tell them we could turn our brand into your brand for a profit share. And from that, people instantly want to work with us, from big names to these big, huge YouTubers, and it just opened our eyes up to the social media e-commerce market. And since being in LA, I work with some of the biggest YouTubers, the biggest rappers, some of the biggest influencers in today's market. And there's a lot more to come about. You say a lot more to come about that? All right. And there's a lot more to come about that. I'll keep you guys updated on our journey.
Good. So what we can do is that once you